she saw her crippled millionaire ex sitting alone in the restaurant. Her son moved closer and massaged his feet to become well. Is he mine? The question hung in the air between them, 3 words that could shatter or rebuild entire worlds. Dominic Ashford's hands trembled against the arms of his wheelchair, his amber eyes locked on the small boy kneeling at his feet. A boy with his exact same eyes, his exact same dark hair, his exact same determined jaw. Vivian felt the oxygen leave her lungs. 6 years. 6 years of running, of hiding, of protecting her son from a truth she thought would destroy them both. And now, in this upscale Boston restaurant, with champagne glasses clinking around them and strangers celebrating lives that had nothing to do with theirs, everything was collapsing. Yes. Her hands formed the sign language gesture before her voice could catch up, a habit from her work at the rehabilitation center. Yes, he's yours. Dominic closed his eyes. 1 tear escaped down his cheek before he could stop it. When did you know? 2 months after I left. I was already gone. Already convinced you'd used me. Already certain that telling you would mean losing him to custody battles I couldn't win, so you kept my son from me for 5 years. 5 years of birthdays and first words and first steps. 5 years of him growing up without a father. 5 years of me not knowing I had a child. The pain in his voice was a living thing, sharp enough to cut through every justification Vivian had built around her choice. I thought I was protecting him. Her voice broke. I thought you were going to marry someone else for a business merger. I thought our whole relationship was just strategy for you, and you never thought to ask me? To give me a chance to explain? I was terrified. And young. And I heard what I heard. What you thought you heard, Dominic corrected, his voice rough with barely controlled emotion. What you misunderstood. The little boy between them, oblivious to the devastation passing over his head, continued gently massaging the motionless legs of the father he'd just met. My mama says broken things need kindness to heal. His small voice cut through the tension like a bell. Does it hurt, being broken? But to understand how we got here, to this moment of reckoning in a restaurant where past and present collided with the force of a hurricane, we need to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to when Vivian Morgan walked into that restaurant and saw the ghost of her past sitting alone in the shadows. Have you ever seen someone from your past and felt your entire world tilt on its axis? Someone who still has the power to stop your heart with just their presence? Someone you thought you'd never see again, and part of you hoped you wouldn't because the pain of what you lost was still too raw, too real, too close to the surface? That's what happened to Vivian the moment she spotted him. The wine glass slipped from her fingers before she could stop it. The sound of crystal shattering on marble should have been loud, should have drawn attention, but the ambient noise of the restaurant swallowed it whole. Conversations continued. Laughter bubbled from nearby tables. Servers glided past with trays held high. The world kept turning, even though Vivian's had just stopped spinning. Mama? 5-year-old Marcus tugged on her hand, his dark eyebrows drawn together in concern. Mama, you dropped your glass. Vivian couldn't respond. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Because there, across the crowded dining room of La Lumiere, Boston's most exclusive restaurant, sat Dominic Ashford. The man she'd loved with everything in her 6 years ago. The man she'd run from when she discovered what she believed was the truth about their relationship. The man whose child currently held her hand asking why she'd gone so pale. Except the Dominic she remembered didn't sit in wheelchairs. The Dominic she remembered stood 6'3", commanded every room he entered with the quiet confidence of someone who'd never had to raise his voice to be heard. The Dominic she remembered moved through the world like he owned it, and in many ways, he did. Ashford Pharmaceuticals. Real estate holdings across 3 continents. A personal fortune that made him one of the youngest billionaires in America. This Dominic sat alone at a corner table, positioned near the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Boston Harbor. The lights of the city reflected off the water behind him, creating a halo effect that was almost cruel in its beauty. His custom-tailored charcoal suit fit perfectly, because money always bought perfect tailoring, but it couldn't hide the wheelchair. Couldn't disguise the way his powerful upper body had adapted to doing the work his legs no longer could. What happened to you? The thought screamed through Vivian's mind even as her heart cracked open with an empathy she didn't want to feel. She'd spent 6 years building walls against this man. 6 years convincing herself that he'd been a manipulator, that their love had been strategy. that leaving him had been self-preservation. Those walls trembled now, foundations shaking. "Mama, that man looks sad." Marcus's observation pulled her back to the present. Her son had released her hand and taken 2 steps toward Dominic's table before Vivian's brain caught up with her body. "Marcus, no." She reached for him, but he was already moving, propelled by the same empathetic instinct that made him bring home injured birds and cry over sad songs. "Sweetheart, come back here. We can't bother people while they're eating." "But he's all alone, Mama." "Nobody should eat all alone. That's what you always say." The logic of a 5-year-old, unassailable and inconvenient. Vivian's heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she hurried after her son, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. She was acutely aware of her appearance in a way she hadn't been moments before. The emerald cocktail dress she'd borrowed from her coworker Emma because she owned nothing fancy enough for a donor appreciation dinner. The heels that were half a size too small. The hair she'd spent an hour curling that was already falling flat in Boston's autumn humidity. 6 years ago, she would have belonged in a place like this. 6 years ago, she'd attended galas and benefits on Dominic's arm, wearing designer gowns he'd had delivered to her apartment, drinking wine that cost more than her monthly rent. 6 years ago, she'd been someone else entirely. Now she was a single mother who worked as a physical therapist at Riverside Rehabilitation Center, who clipped coupons and bought Marcus's clothes secondhand, who was only at this restaurant because her boss had insisted that the entire staff attend the Maritime Heritage Foundation's annual donor event, even the ones who worked behind the scenes and never schmooze with millionaires. The irony of that last part wasn't lost on her. Marcus reached Dominic's table before Vivian could intercept him. She watched, frozen in horror and fascination, as her son did something completely, utterly unexpected. He knelt. Right there on the polished hardwood floor of Boston's most expensive restaurant, Marcus knelt beside Dominic's wheelchair. And then, with the unself-conscious compassion that only children possessed, he placed his small hands on Dominic's motionless legs. "My mama says that when things hurt, touching them with kindness helps." Marcus's voice was serious, earnest, carrying the weight of 5-year-old wisdom. "Does it hurt? Being in the chair?" Vivian's world stopped for the second time in 5 minutes. She watched Dominic freeze, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth. Watched his eyes, those distinctive amber eyes that she saw every time she looked at their son, widen in shock. Watched him set the fork down with the careful precision of someone trying not to shatter. And then Dominic looked up. Looked past Marcus. Locked eyes with Vivian across the remaining distance between them. Recognition hit like lightning. His face went through a series of expressions so quickly she almost couldn't track them. Shock. Disbelief. Something that looked like pain. Something that looked like hope. Something that looked like the same mix of emotions currently tearing through Vivian's chest. His lips formed her name, though no sound came out. Vivian. She'd forgotten what it felt like to have him look at her. Really look at her. Like she was the only person in a crowded room. Like she mattered more than anything else in his field of vision. Like she was both the question and the answer. She'd spent 6 years trying to forget that feeling. Marcus, oblivious to the silent earthquake happening above him, continued his gentle ministrations. His small hands moved in slow circles on Dominic's legs, the same way he touched the injured animals at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center where Vivian sometimes volunteered. "My mama works with people in chairs sometimes. At her job. She helps them get better." His hands kept moving, kept that soft, steady pressure. "Are you trying to get better?" Dominic's gaze finally tore away from Vivian's face and dropped to the child kneeling beside him. She watched him really see Marcus for the first time. See the dark hair that matched his own. See the amber eyes. See the determined set of the jaw. See the way Marcus tilted his head when he was thinking, a gesture Dominic himself had made 1,000 times. She watched the exact moment understanding began to dawn. The color drained from Dominic's face. His hands gripped the arms of his wheelchair so tightly his knuckles went white. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Who are you?" The question came out rough, barely controlled. "I'm Marcus. Marcus Hayes. I'm 5 years old. Well, 5.5 really. My birthday was in January." His hands never stopped moving, never stopped that gentle pressure on Dominic's legs. "You look nice. Sad, but nice. Mama says some people carry sadness in their eyes even when they smile." "And who is your mama?" Vivian felt her feet carrying her forward even though every instinct screamed to run. She reached Marcus and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, trying to ignore the way her fingers trembled. "Marcus, sweetheart, you can't just walk up to strangers and touch them. That's not appropriate. We talked about asking permission first." "But Mama, he looked so sad. And lonely." "Nobody should be lonely." Marcus's logic was, as always, impeccable and devastating. Dominic's eyes locked on hers again. Up close, she could see the changes 6 years had carved into his features. The fine lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, the set of his mouth, harder now, more guarded. The eyes that had once been warm amber now carried shadows. "Vivian." He said her name out loud this time, and the sound of it in his voice hit her like a physical blow. 6 years. 6 years and nothing. "And now you're here. I didn't know you'd be here." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "I work for the Maritime Heritage Foundation. This is their donor appreciation dinner. I'm not a donor. I just work there. As a programs coordinator." Why was she babbling? Why couldn't she form coherent sentences? Marcus looked between them, his perceptive 5-year-old brain making connections. "You know each other?" His face lit up with the delight of discovery. "Mama, is this your friend? The one from before I was born?" Vivian's stomach dropped to her feet. Dominic's gaze sharpened, moved from her face to Marcus's and back again. His eyes narrowed slightly, as he did calculations she could see happening behind them. "Before you were born," he repeated slowly. "And when were you born, Marcus?" "January 15th. Marcus supplied helpfully, proudly. "I came early. Mama says I was too excited to wait. I was supposed to be born in February, but I wanted to come in January instead." Vivian watched Dominic count backwards, watched him arrive at the conclusion, watched the devastation bloom across his features. 5.5 years old. Born in January. 9 months from. His voice trailed off. He looked at Vivian with an expression that combined heartbreak and fury and desperate hope. 9 months from when you disappeared. It wasn't a question. "Dominic?" She didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to explain 6 years of choices in a moment. Didn't know how to protect Marcus from a conversation he was too young to understand. "Don't." His voice was sharp, controlled, the voice of a man who'd spent years in boardrooms negotiating billion-dollar deals. "Don't say my name like that. Like we're strangers. Like you didn't vanish from my life without a word. Like I didn't spend 2 years trying to find you before I." He stopped abruptly, his jaw clenching. "Before you what?" "Before the accident. Before I accepted that you were gone and I needed to move on. Before my entire life fell apart." The bitterness in his voice was a serrated edge. Marcus, still kneeling, still touching Dominic's legs with that gentle persistence, looked up at his mother with confusion clouding his features. "Mama, why are you crying?" Vivian hadn't realized tears were sliding down her face until Marcus pointed it out. She wiped at them hastily, trying to smile, trying to pretend her entire carefully constructed world wasn't disintegrating. "I'm okay, baby. Just surprised to see an old friend." "Are these happy tears, or sad tears?" Marcus asked because he always needed to categorize emotions, to understand them. "Both, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups have both kinds at the same time." Dominic's expression softened slightly as he watched the exchange between mother and son. When he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its sharp edges, replaced by something that sounded like exhaustion. "Please." He gestured to the empty chairs at his table. "Sit. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes to understand what happened." "I don't think that's a good idea. I have a right to answers, Vivian. If he's—" Dominic stopped himself, glancing at Marcus, clearly unwilling to have certain conversations in front of the child. 5 minutes. Marcus took the decision out of her hands by climbing into the chair next to Dominic without waiting for permission. "I like it here. This table has the best view of the water. Look, Mama, you can see all the boats." Vivian had no choice but to sink into the remaining chair, her legs suddenly unsteady. A server appeared, offered to bring her a drink, disappeared when she mutely shook her head. The three of them sat in silence for a moment, an impossible tableau. The man she'd loved and left. The son he didn't know was his. The woman caught between past and present. Marcus broke the silence, because Marcus always broke silences. "What happened to your legs?" Can they get better? My mama is really good at helping people's legs get better. She's a physical therapist. That means she knows all about bones and muscles and how to fix them when they're broken. Dominic's lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. Is that what she does now? At Riverside Rehabilitation Center, Vivian confirmed quietly. I work with patients recovering from spinal injuries, strokes, accidents, teaching them to walk again, or to navigate the world if walking isn't possible. The irony, Dominic murmured. You became the thing I needed most. What happened? Vivian asked, the question escaping before she could stop it. The accident. When? 3 years ago. His hands moved to his legs, touched them with a clinical detachment that hurt to watch. Construction site collapse. One of my own development projects actually. Steel beam fell, crushed my lower spine. T12 complete spinal cord injury. The doctor said I'd never walk again. And have you? Walked? Dominic shook his head. 3 years of the best physical therapy money can buy. Experimental treatments, surgeries, nothing. No sensation below my waist, no movement. He paused, then added with a strange expression. Until about 2 minutes ago. Vivian's professional instincts kicked in despite the emotional chaos. What do you mean, until 2 minutes ago? Dominic looked at Marcus, who had returned his attention to Dominic's legs, small hands still moving in those gentle circles. Since your son started touching my legs, I've been feeling something. Warmth, tingling, pressure awareness, sensations I haven't had in 3 years. That's not medically possible. Not with a complete spinal cord injury. I'm aware. And yet, Dominic's hand moved to cover one of Marcus's. The moment their hands touched, Vivian saw something flash across Dominic's face. Wonder. Shock. Can you feel that? I can feel that. His voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus beamed up at him, proud and unsurprised. I told you. Kindness helps things heal. My hands are special. They're warm. Mama says I have healing hands. It's just a phrase, Vivian interjected quickly. He helps calm the animals at the wildlife center. His touch seems to soothe them. It's empathy, not magic. Maybe it's both, Dominic said softly, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. Maybe some things can't be explained by medicine alone. The moment stretched between them, loaded with meaning neither was ready to unpack. A well-dressed couple walked past their table, did a double take when they recognized Dominic. Is that Dominic Ashford? The woman's voice carried despite her attempt to whisper. I heard he never goes out anymore, not since the accident. The man with her replied in an equally audible whisper. Tragic. Built an empire and lost everything that matters. Dominic's jaw tightened but he didn't acknowledge them. Years of practice, Vivian guessed. Learning to ignore the whispers, the pity, the speculation. Marcus, bless him, noticed nothing. He was too busy examining Dominic's wheelchair with the frank curiosity of childhood. This is a really nice chair. My friend's grandpa has a chair but it's not as fancy as this one. Does it go fast? Very fast, Dominic confirmed. And this time the smile reached his eyes. Want to see? Before Vivian could object, Dominic had pulled Marcus onto his lap. His hands moved to the controls and the wheelchair glided forward smoothly, executing a perfect spin that made Marcus shriek with delighted laughter. Watching them together, Vivian felt something crack open in her chest. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same profile, the same gestures, the same easy physicality despite Dominic's limitations. Father and son, even if only one of them knew it yet. They returned to the table, Marcus breathless with excitement. Mama, did you see? We went so fast. Can I have a chair like this? You have working legs, sweetheart. You don't need a wheelchair. But they're cool. Marcus's 5-year-old logic was unassailable. Dominic's expression had shifted into something more serious. He lifted Marcus gently back into his own chair, then turned his full attention to Vivian. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. How old did you say he was? 5.5. And his birthday? January 15th. Dominic did the math again, even though he'd already done it. Even though he already knew the answer. He was conceived in April. Late April. Around the time you disappeared from my life without explanation. Vivian's throat was so tight she could barely breathe. Yes. Is he mine? The question hung in the air between them, impossible to deflect, impossible to deny. Marcus, sensing the shift in tone even if he didn't understand it, looked between them with wide eyes. Mama? Vivian's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table to still them. Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. Yes, he's yours. If this story is already gripping you, if you're wondering how a love that ended in heartbreak could possibly be rebuilt, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who believes in second chances. Drop a comment if you've ever had to face a truth you'd been running from for years. Because this story is just getting started, and where it goes will remind you why some connections are impossible to break, no matter how much time or pain separates two people. The silence that followed Vivian's admission was deafening. Somewhere in the restaurant, someone laughed. Silverware clinked against china. A cork popped from a champagne bottle. The world continued its oblivious rotation while three lives realigned around a truth spoken aloud for the first time. Dominic's face went through another series of transformations. The careful control he'd maintained shattered, replaced by raw emotion he didn't try to hide. Anger, grief, joy, confusion, all of it warring for dominance across features that had once been so familiar to Vivian she could map them in her sleep. 6 years. His voice shook despite obvious efforts to steady it. 6 years you kept this from me. 6 years of his life. First words. First steps. First everything. I thought I was protecting him. From me? From his own father? From what I thought you were. Vivian's voice rose slightly, drawing a curious glance from a nearby table. She lowered it, acutely aware of Marcus listening even if he didn't understand. From a man I believed had used me as a business strategy. Dominic's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? The contract, Dominic. The one I saw on your desk that last night. The development proposal for the Maritime Heritage Building that specifically outlined leveraging insider community connections to facilitate the acquisition. I was that insider connection. My relationships with the board members, my knowledge of the foundation's financial vulnerabilities, it was all laid out in black and white. How I could be strategically utilized. Understanding dawned on Dominic's face, followed immediately by something that looked like horror. Vivian, that contract wasn't about you. It had my name right there in the proposal summary. No. Dominic's hands gripped his wheelchair's armrests. It referenced maritime heritage connections, which meant my family's historical ties to the shipping industry. 3 generations of Ashfords in maritime commerce. The connections were familial and historical, not personal. Not you. Never you. Vivian felt the foundation of her 6-year narrative begin to crumble. What? I was going to tell you about the development project that weekend. I deliberately kept it separate from our relationship because I wanted you to know that what we had was completely independent of any business dealings. I was going to explain everything. And then you vanished. But the timing, the engagement announcement to Senator Crawford's daughter, Rebecca Crawford, was already engaged to my business partner, James. That announcement was about their engagement, not mine. I was the best man, Vivian, not the groom. The restaurant tilted around her. 6 years. 6 years of believing a lie. 6 years of building walls against a man who'd never betrayed her. 6 years of keeping Marcus from a father who would have loved him. I saw what I saw, she whispered, but the conviction was gone from her voice. You saw what you feared, Dominic corrected gently. And you ran before asking for the truth. Marcus, who had been watching this exchange with increasing worry, reached for both of them. His small hand found Vivian's wrist, then Dominic's hand. Please don't fight. Fighting makes my tummy hurt. Both adults immediately shifted their attention to the child between them. The child who connected them, whether they wanted that connection or not. We're not fighting, sweetheart, Vivian assured him, smoothing his dark hair with trembling fingers. We're just talking about complicated grown-up things. Dominic's voice was softer when he spoke again, gentled by Marcus's presence. What's his full name? Marcus Alexander Hayes. Vivian watched Dominic's reaction. Alexander was my father's name. Hayes is my mother's maiden name. Why not Ashford? Because you didn't know about him. Because I thought. The words stuck in her throat. Because you were protecting him from a monster who didn't exist. Dominic finished for her. His expression held no anger now, just a devastating sadness. I would have been there, Vivienne. For all of it. The pregnancy. The birth. Every moment since. I would have chosen you both over everything else. Past tense, she noted, Would have. Before Dominic could respond, Marcus tugged on his sleeve. Are you my daddy? The direct question, asked with the fearless honesty of a 5-year-old, froze both adults. Dominic's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. He looked at Vivian, silently asking permission for the answer they both knew was true. She nodded, barely perceptible. Dominic turned his full attention to Marcus, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of every moment he'd missed, every milestone he'd been absent for, every bedtime story left unread. Yes, I'm your daddy. I didn't know about you until right now, but yes, you're my son. Marcus processed this information with the serious consideration he gave to all important revelations. Then why weren't you there before? Daddies are supposed to be there. Because I didn't know you existed. Your mama and we had a big misunderstanding. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes because they're scared or confused. And because of our mistakes, I missed getting to know you. But I know now. And if you'll let me, if your mama will let me, I'd like to be part of your life from now on. Marcus looked at Vivian. Is that okay, Mama? Can he be my daddy now? How did you explain to a 5-year-old the complexity of this situation? How did you convey years of pain and misunderstanding and careful choices made with the best intentions? Yes, baby, Vivian said finally. He can be your daddy now. Marcus's face split into a brilliant smile. Good, because I always wanted a daddy. Emma has a daddy and Carlos has a daddy and Mia has 2 daddies. I was the only one with just a mama. And mamas are great, but daddies are good too, right? The innocent observation hit both adults like a sledgehammer. Dominic reached out slowly, giving Marcus time to pull away if he wanted. When Marcus didn't move, Dominic's hand cupped the side of his son's face with a reverence that made Vivian's eyes sting. I'm so sorry I wasn't there, Dominic said, speaking to Marcus, but clearly meaning it for both of them. I would have been if I'd known. I promise you that. It's okay, Marcus replied with the easy forgiveness of childhood. You're here now, and maybe I can help your legs get better. My hands are really good at fixing things. I'd like that very much. A server approached, clearly uncomfortable interrupting, but committed to doing his job. Excuse me, Mr. Ashford, but the event coordinator from the gala is looking for you. You're scheduled to give remarks in 15 minutes. Dominic's jaw tightened. Tell them I'm unable to attend. Something more important has come up. But sir, you're the keynote speaker. Then they'll have to keynote without me. Dominic's tone left no room for argument. The server retreated hastily. Vivian found her voice. You don't have to skip your event because of us. Yes, Dominic said firmly. I do. I've missed 6 years of my son's life. I'm not missing another minute. The gala can survive without me. I can't survive losing you both again. We're not going anywhere, Vivian said, then realized the presumption in her words. I mean, we should talk. Properly. About what this means. How to move forward. Yes. Dominic's eyes held hers with an intensity that recalled every moment they'd shared 6 years ago. We have 6 years to catch up on. And a future to figure out. His gaze moved to Marcus. If you're both willing, Marcus had no hesitation. I want to know my daddy. He's nice. And he has a cool chair. And maybe his legs will get better like the baby deer we helped at the wildlife center. Vivian couldn't help but smile despite everything. That deer had a sprained ankle, sweetheart. Not a spinal cord injury. But you said we should always have hope, Marcus insisted. You said giving up is what makes things impossible, not the hurt itself. Out of the mouths of babes. Dominic's expression was tender as he looked at Marcus. Your mama is a wise woman. She's the best mama ever, Marcus declared loyally. She works really hard. And she makes the best pancakes. And she reads me stories every night even when she's tired. And she always knows how to make hurt things better. Dominic's gaze returned to Vivian, and in his eyes she saw everything they'd lost and everything they might rebuild. She sounds extraordinary. The moment stretched between them, loaded with history and possibility. Where are you staying? Dominic asked. Still in Boston? Dorchester. Small apartment near the center. It's not much, but it's home. Can I? Dominic hesitated, vulnerability crossing his features. Can I see you again? Both of you? Tomorrow maybe? I'd like to spend time with Marcus. Get to know him, if that's okay. The request was so different from the demanding, confident Dominic she remembered. This version asked instead of assumed. Requested instead of commanded. The accident had changed more than just his mobility. Okay, Vivian agreed, her heart hammering. Tomorrow is Saturday. We usually go to the park in the morning, then maybe the library or the science museum if it's raining. The park sounds perfect. Which one? Franklin Park, by the playground near the zoo entrance. Around 10? I'll be there. Marcus bounced in his seat with excitement. Can we show him my favorite swings? And the big slide? And maybe the pond where the ducks live? We can show him everything, Vivian promised, trying to ignore the way her voice shook. The restaurant manager approached their table, his expression apologetic but firm. Mr. Ashford, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, but the foundation's president is asking for you personally. They're getting ready to announce the new pediatric wing donation and— Tell Harrison I'll call him tomorrow, Dominic interrupted. Family emergency. The manager's eyes flickered to Vivian and Marcus, clearly trying to reconcile Dominic. Ashford's known personal life with the woman and child currently sitting at his table. Of course, sir. I'll let them know. After the manager left, Vivian raised an eyebrow. Harrison? Your father is here? He's always here when there's money and publicity involved, Dominic said with barely concealed bitterness. We're not on speaking terms at the moment. Haven't been since the accident. Why not? Because he thinks my disability makes me unfit to run the company. He's been trying to push me out for 3 years. The wheelchair makes him uncomfortable, and God forbid Harrison Ashford be uncomfortable. Marcus frowned. That's not nice. My mama says wheelchairs are just different ways of moving around, like how some people wear glasses to see better. It's helping, not wrong. Your mama is right, Dominic agreed. But some people can't see past their own prejudices. Prejudices means being mean to people because they're different, Marcus announced, clearly proud of his vocabulary. We learned that word in school. That's exactly what it means, Vivian confirmed. And you're absolutely right that Dominic's grandfather is being unkind. The casual way she referred to Harrison as Marcus's grandfather seemed to hit Dominic with fresh force. He has grandparents. Parents he's never met. My mother would. His voice cracked. My mother would have loved him. Would have? Past tense? She passed away 4 years ago. Cancer. Dominic's hands tightened on his armrests. She always wanted grandchildren. I told her someday, when I found the right person. I thought I had found the right person. And then you left. And she died never knowing she had a grandson. The guilt that crashed over Vivian was suffocating. I'm sorry. I didn't know. How could you? You made sure I could never find you. New phone number. New address. You quit your job at the foundation. It was like you'd vanished into thin air. Do you have any idea how many investigators I hired? How many dead ends I hit? I was trying to survive, Vivian shot back, defensive. I was pregnant and alone, and convinced the man I loved had been using me. I couldn't afford to be found. So you made absolutely certain I couldn't be a father to my own child. The accusation hung between them, sharp and undeniable. Marcus's small voice cut through the tension. Please, stop. You're doing angry voices. I don't like angry voices. Both adults immediately dialed back their intensity. You're right, buddy, Dominic said gently. I'm sorry. Your mama and I have a lot to work through, but we shouldn't do it in front of you. This isn't your responsibility to fix. But I want to fix it, Marcus insisted. I want us to be happy. Like a family. The simple declaration nearly broke them both. We'll work on it, Vivian promised, meaning it despite her uncertainty about how. One step at a time, okay? Okay. Marcus seemed satisfied with this. Can we get ice cream? Happy families always get ice cream in my books. Dominic laughed, and the sound was so unexpected, so genuine, that Vivian felt tears prick at her eyes again. This kid negotiates like a pro. Did he inherit that from me? Definitely from you, Vivian confirmed. He's terrifyingly good at getting what he wants. Then ice cream it is, Dominic agreed. There's a place 2 blocks from here. Best gelato in Boston. If your mama says it's okay. All eyes turned to Vivian. She should say no. Should take Marcus home to their small apartment where everything was familiar and safe. Should maintain distance while they figured out custody arrangements and legal parameters and all the complicated adult things that came with co-parenting. But Marcus's hopeful face was impossible to resist. And something in her chest was softening toward the man in the wheelchair, who looked at their son with such transparent love. Okay, she agreed. Ice cream. But just this once. We can't make a habit of late-night sugar runs. It's only 8:30, Dominic pointed out reasonably. Hardly late night. It's late for a 5-year-old with a bedtime. I'll have him back by 9. Scout's honor. Were you even a scout? No, but I'm a quick learner. The easy banter felt familiar and new at the same time. Like slipping into an old comfortable sweater that somehow still fit despite years in storage. They left the restaurant together, an unlikely trio drawing curious stares. Dominic in his high-tech wheelchair, Marcus walking between him and Vivienne, reaching for both their hands with the unconscious assumption that they belonged together. The gelato shop was small and warmly lit, run by an elderly Italian couple who greeted Dominic by name. They didn't comment on his companions, but Vivienne saw the knowing looks exchanged between them. Their regulars brought dates here. Dominic Ashford had never brought anyone. Marcus pressed his face against the display case, trying to decide between 6 different flavors. Can I have 2 scoops? Please? It's a special occasion. What's the special occasion? Vivienne asked. Meeting my daddy, Marcus replied simply, as if it were obvious. Dominic's expression did something complicated. 2 scoops sounds perfect for a special occasion. Make it 3. We're celebrating. While Marcus deliberated with the seriousness of a sommelier choosing wine, Dominic maneuvered his wheelchair closer to Vivienne. Thank you, he said quietly. For not running away again. For giving me this chance. I owe you 6 years, Vivienne replied. This is the least I can do. You don't owe me anything. We both made mistakes. You thought you were protecting him. I understand that now. Do you? Really? Dominic's eyes met hers, sincere and sad. I spent 3 years in physical therapy being told I'd never walk again. Being pitied. Being treated like I was fragile. If I thought someone was going to use my condition for their own gain, for publicity or sympathy or access to my money, I'd run too. Self-preservation isn't weakness, Vivienne. It's survival. The understanding in his voice unraveled something in her chest. I should have asked, she admitted. Should have given you the benefit of the doubt. Should have trusted what we had enough to demand the truth instead of assuming the worst. We were young. I was arrogant. You were guarded. Neither of us handled it well. Marcus returned to them with his decision made. Chocolate and pistachio. And can I try yours too? You can try everyone's, Dominic assured him. That's what families do. That word again, family, spoken so casually, as if the 3 of them were already one. They sat at a small table by the window, Marcus between them, happily working through his gelato with single-minded focus. Vivienne watched Dominic watch their son, saw the wonder and grief and love playing across his features. What's he like? Dominic asked softly. Tell me everything. What he loves, what he's afraid of, what makes him laugh. Where do I even start? Start anywhere. I have 6 years to catch up on. So Vivienne talked. Told him about Marcus's obsession with stars and planets. About his collection of rocks he insisted were special. About his gift with animals, the way even feral cats would approach him. About his nightmares after watching a scary movie, and how he still sometimes climbed into her bed seeking comfort. About his first day of kindergarten when he'd cried for 10 minutes, then made 3 best friends. About the way he talked to plants like they could understand him. About everything. Dominic listened like it was the most important briefing of his life. Asked questions. Laughed at the funny stories. Looked devastated at the milestones he'd missed. When Marcus started yawning, they knew it was time to go. Outside the gelato shop, Dominic's driver was waiting with the accessible van. The vehicle was sleek and expensive, modified with a wheelchair lift and hand controls. This is your car? Marcus was appropriately impressed. It's like the Batmobile. Similar engineering, Dominic confirmed with a smile. Want to see inside? Marcus's excited yes was immediate. They spent 10 minutes exploring the van's features while Vivienne watched, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. This was her son with his father. This was the relationship she'd denied them both for 6 years. This was what she'd been so afraid of, and it was nothing like her fears. The drive to Vivienne's apartment in Dorchester was quiet, Marcus falling asleep against her shoulder in the back seat. Dominic sat up front with his driver, but kept turning to look at them, as if afraid they might disappear if he looked away too long. When they arrived at the modest 3-story building that was nothing like the luxury Dominic inhabited, Vivienne half expected judgment. Instead, he simply asked, Can I help you get him upstairs? I've got him. She lifted Marcus carefully, his small body heavy with sleep. But tomorrow? You're still coming tomorrow? I'll be there. 10 o'clock. Franklin Park. I wouldn't miss it for anything. Vivian hesitated on the sidewalk, Marcus in her arms, Dominic in his wheelchair. The city lights reflecting off the wet pavement from an earlier rain. Dominic. I really am sorry. For all of it. I know. I'm sorry too. For not making you feel secure enough to trust me with the truth. For whatever I did or didn't do that made you think leaving was your only option. We were different people then. Maybe, Dominic agreed. Or maybe we're finally becoming who we were supposed to be all along. The observation settled between them, heavy with possibility. Good night, Vivian. Good night, Dominic. She carried Marcus upstairs, aware of Dominic watching until she was inside. Through her apartment window, she saw the van pull away, taking him back to whatever penthouse or mansion he called home now. Marcus stirred as she tucked him into bed, his eyes half open. Mama? Did I really meet my daddy tonight? Yes, baby. You really did. Is he going to stay? Or is he going to leave like daddies sometimes do? The question revealed fears Marcus had never voiced before. Fears born from being the only kid in his class without a father at family events. He wants to stay, Vivian said, hoping it was true. He wants to get to know you. Good. Marcus's eyes drifted closed again. I like him. He's nice. And sad. But maybe we can make him less sad. Maybe we can, Vivian agreed softly. After Marcus was fully asleep, Vivian stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Dominic was probably doing the same thing, both of them processing the impossible coincidence that had brought them back together. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thank you for tonight. For letting me meet him. For not running. I meant what I said. I'll be there tomorrow. And every day after that, you'll allow. Sleep well, Vivian. She stared at the message for a long time before replying. See you tomorrow. 3 words. Simple. Insufficient. But a beginning. Vivian crawled into bed, exhausted but unable to sleep. Her mind replayed the evening on an endless loop. Dominic's face when he realized Marcus was his. Marcus's innocent question. Are you my daddy? The 6 years of misunderstanding unraveling in a single conversation. What had she done? What had they both done? And more importantly, what happened now? Those questions followed her into restless sleep, unanswered but urgent. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Tomorrow, they would begin figuring out how to build a bridge across 6 years of separation, how to create a family from the fractured pieces of a love story that had ended before it began. Tomorrow, everything would change. Again. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn sunshine that made Boston beautiful. Vivian woke before her alarm, nerves already jangling in her stomach. Marcus bounced into her room at 7:30, far too early for a weekend, already dressed in his favorite shirt. The blue one with planets on it. Is it time to see Daddy yet? His excitement was palpable, filling the small apartment with an energy that made it impossible to stay anxious. Not for another 2 hours, sweetheart. We need breakfast first. Can we bring him breakfast? Maybe he's hungry too. The thoughtfulness of the suggestion made Vivian's chest ache. I think your daddy probably has people who make him breakfast. He's very wealthy, remember? But does he have people who make it with love? Because you always say that's the most important ingredient. How did you get so wise at 5 years old? Marcus shrugged, climbing onto her bed. I just pay attention. That's what good scientists do. And I'm going to be a scientist when I grow up. Or maybe an astronaut. Or maybe someone who helps animals. I haven't decided yet. You have time to figure it out. Did Daddy always know what he wanted to be? The question stopped Vivian cold. How much should she tell Marcus about Dominic? About the empire he'd built, the ruthlessness he'd been known for in business, the accident that had changed everything? Your daddy has always been very driven, very focused on achieving his goals. He built a big company that helps make medicine for people who are sick. So he helps people get better? Like you do. In a different way, yes. Then, we're a family of healers, Marcus declared with satisfaction. That's good. The world needs more healing. Out of the mouths of babes. They arrived at Franklin Park at 9:45, Vivian's nerves increasing with every step. Marcus ran ahead to the playground, then ran back, then ran ahead again, too excited to stay still. What if he doesn't come? Marcus asked suddenly, his little face shadowed with worry. He'll come. Vivian said it with more confidence than she felt. But what if something happened? What if he changed his mind? What if he doesn't really want to be my daddy? The fears tumbling out of her son's mouth were the same ones churning in Vivian's stomach. She knelt in front of him, taking his small shoulders in her hands. Listen to me. Your daddy wants to know you. I saw it in his eyes last night. He's not going to change his mind. Promise? Promise. At precisely 10 o'clock, a sleek black van pulled into the parking area near the playground. Vivian's heart kicked against her ribs. Marcus grabbed her hand, his earlier excitement tempered by sudden shyness. The van's lift lowered, and Dominic appeared in his wheelchair. He was dressed casually, jeans and a dark sweater, but somehow still managed to look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Money had a way of making even casual look expensive. His eyes scanned the playground until they found them. The smile that broke across his face was genuine, transforming his features from guarded to open. Marcus pressed closer to Vivian's side, suddenly uncertain. It's okay, she whispered. That's your daddy. You were so excited to see him, remember? But now that he's here, it feels different. Scarier. Big feelings are like that sometimes. But brave doesn't mean not scared. Brave means doing it anyway. Marcus took a deep breath, the way Vivian had taught him to do when facing something frightening. Then he let go of her hand, and walked slowly toward Dominic. Vivian watched Dominic's face as Marcus approached. Saw the vulnerability there, the hope mixed with fear. He was just as nervous as they were. Hi, Marcus said softly when he reached the wheelchair. You came. Of course I came. I promised, didn't I? And daddies keep their promises. Even daddies who just became daddies? Especially those daddies. We have a lot of time to make up for. Marcus processed this, then asked with typical directness. Are you sad that you missed so much of my life? Vivian started to intervene, to redirect the conversation away from painful territory, but Dominic caught her eye and gave a small shake of his head. He could handle this. Yes, Dominic said honestly. I'm very sad about that. I wish I could have been there when you were born. When you took your first steps. When you said your first word. I missed all of those important moments, and that makes me sad. Mama says we can't change the past, but we can choose what happens next. Your mama is absolutely right. And what happens next is that I get to know you. If you'll let me. Marcus tilted his head, considering. What do you want to know? Everything. What's your favorite color? What do you want to be when you grow up? What makes you laugh? What scares you? What do you dream about? That's a lot of questions. We have a lot of time. Marcus's face brightened. Okay. My favorite color is blue. Like the ocean and the sky. I want to be a scientist or an astronaut, or maybe someone who helps animals. Tickling makes me laugh. The dark scares me sometimes, but not if mama's there. And I dream about flying. Like a bird, but also like a spaceship. Those are excellent answers. Want to know mine? You have favorite things too? Even though you're a grown-up? Especially because I'm a grown-up. Grown-ups need favorite things too. They spent the next 20 minutes trading information, while Vivian watched from a nearby bench. Favorite foods. Favorite books. Favorite sounds. Marcus's unself-conscious questions mixed with Dominic's thoughtful answers, building a foundation of knowing each other. Eventually, Marcus grabbed Dominic's hand. Come see my favorite swings. They go really high. Lead the way. Navigating the playground in a wheelchair proved challenging. The mulch surface made rolling difficult. But Dominic didn't complain, just worked harder, his upper body strength evident in the way he powered through the obstacles. When they reached the swings, Marcus climbed on one and looked expectantly at Dominic. Can you push me? The question was innocent, but Vivian saw it land on Dominic like a blow. The mechanics of pushing a swing from a wheelchair were complicated if not impossible. I can push you, sweetheart, Vivian offered, starting to stand. No. Dominic's voice was firm. I want to try. Dominic? The playground surface. Your chair. I said, I want to try. He maneuvered his wheelchair behind the swing, positioned himself carefully. His first attempt to push Marcus while maintaining control of his chair failed. The second attempt was slightly better. By the third push, he'd found a rhythm. Higher, Daddy. Marcus's delighted shout carried across the playground. Dominic pushed harder, and Marcus soared, his laughter pure joy. Vivian watched, tears streaming down her face without her permission. This was what she'd denied them. This simple moment of father and son, playing together like families did. 6 years of these moments, lost to misunderstanding and fear. After the swings came the slide, which Dominic couldn't access. But he positioned himself at the bottom, arms outstretched, catching Marcus as he came down. Again and again and again, until Marcus was breathless with giggles. They explored the entire playground, finding creative solutions to accessibility challenges. When Marcus wanted to climb the big structure, Dominic talked him through it from below, offering encouragement and praise. When Marcus found an injured butterfly, Dominic examined it with the same seriousness he'd probably brought to boardroom negotiations. Around noon they settled on a park bench, Marcus between them, sharing the sandwiches Vivian had packed. "This is nice," Marcus announced, through a mouthful of peanut butter. "Like a real family." "We are a real family," Dominic said quietly. "But we don't live together." "Real families live together." The observation hung in the air, uncomfortable and true. "Some families live together," Vivian explained carefully. "And some families live in different houses but still love each other very much. There's no one right way to be a family. But, which kind are we going to be? That's something your mama and I need to figure out," Dominic answered when Vivian hesitated. "It's complicated, buddy. There's a lot of grown-up stuff we need to work through first. Do you love each other? Because in my books, when people love each other and have a kid, they live together." The directness of the question left both adults speechless. "Marcus," Vivian started, but didn't know how to finish. Dominic's hand found hers on the bench between them. His fingers laced through hers with a familiarity that suggested muscle memory never forgot, even when minds tried to. "I love your mama very much," he said, eyes on Vivian, speaking to Marcus but clearly meaning the words for her. "I loved her 6 years ago. I loved her during the years we were apart, even though I tried to stop. And I love her now. But love isn't always simple. Sometimes it needs time to heal from hurt. Sometimes it needs to rebuild trust. Can you understand that?" Marcus nodded solemnly. Like how the baby owl at the wildlife center was scared of Mama at first, even though she was trying to help. It took time before the owl trusted her. Exactly like that. So, you need time before you trust each other again? We need time to figure out how to be a family in a way that works for everyone. Especially you. You're the most important part of this equation. "I'm good at math," Marcus offered helpfully. "Maybe I can help with the equation." Despite the heavy conversation, both adults laughed. They spent the afternoon at the Museum of Science, Marcus dragging Dominic from exhibit to exhibit with boundless enthusiasm. The museum was accessible, and Dominic navigated it with practiced ease. Other visitors stared, some with curiosity, some with pity, some with recognition. Dominic Ashford was famous enough that being seen in public drew attention. "Is that normal?" Vivian asked quietly while Marcus was absorbed in a butterfly exhibit. "The staring? You get used to it. After the accident, I stopped going out for a while because I couldn't handle the looks. The pity was worse than the curiosity, but eventually, you realize that hiding away means letting the wheelchair win. I refused to let it define my entire existence. That must have been hard." The adjustment. Dominic's expression darkened. The physical therapy was brutal, learning to do everything differently, losing independence. But the hardest part was the isolation. People treat you differently when you're disabled. They speak slower, like the wheelchair affected my brain. They make assumptions about what I can and can't do. They see the chair before they see me. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be one of the people who sees past it. You and Marcus, you both do that naturally." He approached me without hesitation yesterday. No fear, no pity, just kindness. Do you know how rare that is? He has a gift for seeing people's hearts instead of their circumstances. I see where he gets that from. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Recognition. Possibility. The fragile beginning of rebuilt trust. Marcus ran back to them, breathless. "Daddy, did you know there are butterflies that migrate thousands of miles?" "Thousands. That's farther than from here to California." "That is pretty far," Dominic agreed. "Why do they migrate?" "To find food and good weather and places to have babies. They're really brave. It's dangerous to fly that far. But they do it anyway, because the destination is worth the risk." Exactly. Vivian didn't miss the metaphor, and from Dominic's expression neither did he. As the afternoon stretched into early evening, Marcus's energy finally began to flag. He climbed into Dominic's lap without asking permission, his small body tucked against his father's chest. Dominic's arms came around him automatically, his eyes closing briefly at the simple trust of the gesture. "I'm tired," Marcus mumbled. "Can we sit for a minute?" "We can sit for as long as you need." They found a quiet corner of the museum, away from the crowds. Marcus fell asleep within minutes, his breathing deep and even. "He's out," Vivian observed softly. Today was a big day for him. For all of us. Dominic's hand stroked Marcus's dark hair with infinite gentleness. "Thank you for this. For letting me spend the day with him. You're his father. You have a right to time with him. I know, but you could have made this difficult. Could have demanded lawyers and custody agreements and formal visitation schedules. Instead, you trusted me enough to just let us be together. That means everything. I saw how you looked at him yesterday. How you look at him now. Whatever mistakes we've made, whatever hurt exists between us, I can't deny that you love him. I do. From the moment I realized he was mine, from the moment he called me daddy, something in me just—" Dominic paused, searching for words. Something locked into place. Like I'd been waiting my whole life without knowing what for, and suddenly there he was, my son. The raw honesty in his voice undid something in Vivian's chest. "I'm sorry I took that from you. The knowing, the being there, all of it. I thought I was making the right choice, but I see now how much damage I caused. We both caused damage. I made you feel unsafe enough to run. That's on me too." They sat in silence for a while, Marcus sleeping peacefully between them, the museum's ambient noise a soft backdrop. "What happened after I left?" Vivian asked finally. "Really happened. You said you looked for me. For 2 years. Dominic's voice was quiet, remembering. "I hired investigators. Tracked down every Vivian Morgan in New England. None of them were you. It was like you'd become a ghost. I changed my name legally. Took my mother's maiden name. Hayes instead of Morgan. Smart. Made you impossible to find. After 2 years of dead ends, I tried to move on. Threw myself into work. Expanded the company. Made more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. Dated people who meant nothing. Tried to convince myself I was over you. Were you?" Dominic looked at her, his amber eyes honest. "No, every woman I met I compared to you. None of them measured up. None of them made me feel anything close to what I felt in those 8 months we had together." "What about the accident? When did that happen?" "Year 3. I'd finally gotten a lead on your location. An old colleague from the Maritime Heritage Foundation thought they'd seen you at a rehabilitation center in Dorchester. I was driving there myself because I couldn't wait, couldn't send an investigator. I needed to see if it was really you. I was distracted. Didn't see the construction zone. Didn't see the crane collapse until it was too late. Oh God, Dominic. The beam crushed my spine, severed the spinal cord at T12. Complete injury. The doctor said I was lucky to survive. Lucky." He laughed bitterly. "I'd just lost the use of my legs. Lucky wasn't the word I would have chosen." "And your father? You said you weren't speaking." Harrison blamed the accident on my distraction. Said I was unfit to run the company if I was so obsessed with a woman who clearly wanted nothing to do with me that I nearly killed myself. We've been at war ever since. That's terrible. That's Harrison. Control and image are the only things that matter to him. A son in a wheelchair doesn't fit his vision of the Ashford legacy. Marcus stirred in Dominic's arms, mumbled something incoherent, then settled again. "He's amazing," Dominic murmured. "Everything about him. His curiosity, his kindness, his fearlessness. You did that. You raised him to be extraordinary. We did that. Half his DNA is yours. The determination, the intelligence, the intensity. That's all you." The shared pride in their son created a moment of connection that felt like the old days. Before misunderstandings. Before separation. When they'd been Dominic and Vivian, young and in love and certain of their future. "Can I ask you something?" Vivian's voice was hesitant. "Yesterday, when Marcus was touching your legs, you said you felt something. Sensations you haven't had in 3 years. Was that real?" Dominic nodded slowly. "I know how it sounds. Impossible. The doctors have made it clear that complete spinal cord injuries don't heal. The damage is permanent. But I felt warmth. Tingling. Pressure awareness. Things I haven't felt since the accident. Could it have been phantom sensations? The brain sometimes creates false signals. I'm aware of that phenomenon. I've experienced it before, moments when my brain insists my legs are still there, still functional, only to be reminded they're not. But this was different. More concrete. More real. What did your doctors say when you told them? I haven't told them yet. Why not? Because I wanted to see if it would happen again. If being around Marcus would produce the same effect. Dominic hesitated, then continued. While we were at the playground, when he hugged me, I felt my toes move. Deliberately. Not a spasm. Movement. Vivian's professional mind struggled with this information. That's not medically possible. Not with your injury classification. I know. But it happened. Can I? Vivian paused, professional curiosity warring with personal boundaries. Can I examine you? Assess the range of motion and sensation? I work with spinal cord injuries. I might be able to determine if something has changed. Now? Marcus is asleep. We have time. If you're comfortable with it. Dominic's expression was unreadable. You want to do a physical therapy assessment? Here. In the Museum of Science. There's a family room. Private. Accessible. We could use that space. All right? If you think it might help explain what's happening. They made their way to the family room, Marcus still sleeping against Dominic's shoulder. Vivian locked the door behind them, ensuring privacy. Okay, let's start with basic sensation response. She knelt beside Dominic's wheelchair, very aware of the intimacy of touching him, of the professional line she needed to maintain. I'm going to touch different areas of your legs. Tell me what you feel, if anything. Her hands moved to his ankle, applying gentle pressure. Anything? No. She moved higher, to his calf. Here? Nothing. Knee? Still nothing. But when her hands reached his thigh, Dominic inhaled sharply. There. Warmth. Pressure. Not strong, but definitely present. Vivian's professional composure slipped. Dominic, that's above your injury site. You shouldn't have lost sensation there. I did. For 3 years, nothing. And now something's changed. She continued the assessment, documenting areas of returned sensation, testing for motor response. When she asked Dominic to try moving his toes, his right big toe flexed slightly. Did you see that? Dominic's voice was tight with emotion. Tell me you saw that. I saw it. Vivian sat back on her heels, mind racing through medical possibilities. This doesn't make sense. Spinal cord injuries don't spontaneously heal, especially not 3 years post-trauma. Then, how do you explain it? I can't. Not with current medical understanding. Marcus, Dominic's gaze moved to their sleeping son. It started when he touched me. His healing hands, he called them. What if there's something to that? He's 5 years old, Dominic. He's not performing miracles. Then what is this? Before Vivian could answer, Marcus woke up, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Are we still at the museum? We are, buddy. Dominic's voice was gentle. We were just talking while you rested. Marcus looked between them, then smiled. You have happy faces. That's good. What makes you think we're happy? Because you're close to each other. And Mama isn't doing her worried frown. And Daddy looks less sad than yesterday. The observational skills of this child were frightening. You're very perceptive, Vivian said. I pay attention. That's what scientists do. If you've been wondering whether love can overcome years of pain and misunderstanding, if you reinvested in seeing where this impossible second chance leads, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment about whether you believe some connections are meant to be, no matter how much time passes. Because this family's journey is about to get even more complicated, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The weeks that followed established a pattern. Dominic came to Boston every weekend, sometimes staying through Monday. He and Marcus built a relationship that grew more natural with each visit. Bedtime stories over video calls during the week. Weekend adventures to aquariums and planetariums and anywhere Marcus's curiosity led them. And slowly, carefully, Dominic and Vivian rebuilt something too. Not the relationship they'd had before. Something different. More cautious. More honest. Built on the foundation of Keo parenting, but evolving into something that felt like the beginning of love again. Dominic's physical improvements continued in ways that baffled his medical team. Sensation returned incrementally. Muscle response improved. By week 4, he could stand with the support of leg braces and canes. By week 6, he took 3 independent steps. The doctors called it miraculous. Unprecedented. Medically inexplicable. Marcus called it his healing hands working. Vivian called it the power of having something worth fighting for. Whatever the cause, the transformation was undeniable. It was during week 7 that complications arrived in the form of Harrison Ashford. Vivian was at work when her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Ms. Hayes?" A crisp female voice. "I'm calling on behalf of Harrison Ashford. He'd like to meet with you regarding his grandson." Vivian's stomach dropped. "I don't think that's appropriate. Any communication about Marcus should go through Dominic." Mr. Ashford was quite insistent. "He's prepared to make it worth your time. Shall we say $5,000 for 1 hour of conversation?" The amount was obscene. Also insulting. "I'm not interested in Mr. Ashford's money. Please don't call again." She hung up, hands shaking. "Called Dominic immediately. He answered on the first ring. Is everything okay, Marcus?" "Marcus is fine. But your father's assistant just called. Trying to arrange a meeting. Offering money." The silence on the other end was heavy. "I was afraid of this." "Afraid of what?" "My father's been trying to remove me from the company for years." The wheelchair gave him ammunition. "Claimed I was mentally unfit. Too focused on recovery to run Ashford Pharmaceuticals effectively. The board sided with me barely. But now he knows about Marcus. Now he knows I have a secret son with a woman from a completely different world. He'll try to use it against me. Against you. Against all of us. What can he actually do?" Harrison Ashford is one of the most powerful men in pharmaceutical development. He can do a lot of damage if he's motivated. And trust me, he's motivated. The fear in Dominic's voice was new and alarming. That evening, Vivian got her answer about what Harrison could do. The tabloid appeared online first. Ashford heirs secret love child. Gold digger returns after billionaire's accident. The article was filled with half-truths and innuendo. Photos of Vivian and Marcus, clearly taken without their knowledge. Speculation about her motives. Suggestions that she'd deliberately hidden Marcus until Dominic was vulnerable and wealthy enough to exploit. By morning, it had spread everywhere. Paparazzi appeared outside Vivian's apartment. At Marcus's school. At the rehabilitation center where she worked. Marcus came home crying because kids at school had asked if his mama was a gold digger. He didn't know what that meant. But he knew it was bad. That's when Vivian called Dominic, voice shaking with fury. "Make it stop. I don't care what it takes. Make them leave my son alone. I'm handling it." Dominic sounded exhausted. "I've got lawyers on it. But these things take time. We don't have time." Marcus is scared. He doesn't understand why strangers are taking pictures and asking questions. "This is exactly what I was afraid of 6 years ago. Your world destroying ours. That's not fair. Isn't it? You promised we'd be protected. You said you could keep us safe. Where's that protection now, Vivian?" The pain in his voice gave her pause. "I know you're scared. I know this is awful. But running away won't solve it. It'll just confirm everything they're saying about you. So what do? We face it. Together. But I need you to trust me." Trust. That word again. The thing they'd been rebuilding brick by fragile brick. Vivian took a shaky breath. "Okay, what's the plan?" "Come to New York. You and Marcus. Stay at my place where security can actually protect you. Let me introduce you both publicly, on our terms. Take away the mystery and the story dies. Run to you for protection. Exactly what the tabloids are accusing me of doing. Or stand beside me as my partner. As Marcus's mother. As someone who has nothing to hide because we're building a family. There's a difference. The distinction mattered. Running to versus standing with." "Okay," Vivian agreed finally. "But we do this my way. No PR spin. No manufactured narratives. Just the truth." "Just the truth," Dominic agreed. 2 days later, Vivian and Marcus arrived at Dominic's penthouse in Manhattan. The building's security was intense, keeping photographers at bay. The penthouse itself was massive, accessible, luxurious in ways that made Vivian's apartment look like a closet. Marcus was appropriately awed. "Daddy, you live in the sky. We're so high up the clouds are close. Pretty cool, right?" "The coolest?" Dominic had prepared a room for Marcus, decorated with stars and planets and a telescope positioned at the window. Marcus's delighted reaction made the whole stressful journey worth it. That night, after Marcus was asleep, Dominic and Vivian sat in his living room. the Manhattan skyline glittering beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. "Tomorrow I'm calling a press conference," Dominic said. "I'll introduce you both. Explain the situation. My father will be there. He'll oppose it. Why do you think he's doing this? What does he gain from hurting us? Control. Harrison thrives on it. Me falling in love, having a child, building a family outside his influence, that threatens his control. If he can paint you as manipulative, paint our relationship as a liability, he can leverage it to push me out of the company. Would that be so terrible? Losing the company?" Dominic was quiet for a long moment. "A year ago, I would have said yes. The company was everything. My identity, my purpose. But now," he turned to look at her, "now I'd choose you and Marcus over Ashford Pharmaceuticals without hesitation. That company is my legacy, but you two are my life." The declaration hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. "Dominic, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I just need you to know where my priorities are, what I'm willing to fight for." Their eyes met, and Vivian saw the truth in his gaze. This wasn't the ambitious, corporate-focused Dominic of 6 years ago. This was a man who'd lost everything, rebuilt himself, and learned what actually mattered. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of your father. Of the press. Of screwing this up for Marcus." "Me too. But we're scared together. That has to count for something." His hand found hers in the space between them on the couch. His fingers laced through hers with a rightness that suggested they'd always belonged that way. "We should talk about us," Vivian said softly. "About what we're doing. What this is. What do you want it to be?" "I don't know. 6 years ago, I was so certain. And then I was so wrong. Or I thought I was wrong. And now I don't trust my own judgment. So we figure it out together. No assumptions, no expectations. Just honesty. Can it really be that simple? Probably not. But we can try." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the city lights. "I never stopped loving you," Dominic said finally. "Even when I thought you'd used me and left. Even when I was angry. Even when I tried to move on. Some part of me was always yours." "I never stopped either," Vivian confessed. "I told myself I did. Convinced myself you were the villain in my story. But every time Marcus smiled, I saw you. Every time he showed that determined focus, I saw you. You were always there, even in absence. So where does that leave us? Trying. One day at a time. For Marcus first. But maybe for us too. I can work with maybe." Dominic leaned in slowly, giving Vivian time to pull away. When she didn't, his lips brushed hers in a kiss that was both familiar and new. Gentle. Questioning. Full of promise. When they pulled apart, Vivian was crying. "Happy tears or sad tears?" Dominic asked, echoing Marcus's frequent question. "Both. Always both with you." The press conference the next morning was brutal. Held at Ashford Pharmaceuticals headquarters, the room was packed with journalists, cameras, curious shareholders. Harrison sat in the front row, his expression carved from stone. Dominic stood at the podium, supported by his braces and canes, refusing the wheelchair for this moment. Vivian stood slightly behind him, Marcus between them. "Thank you for coming." Dominic's voice was steady, commanding. "I'm here to address recent speculation about my personal life. Yes, I have a son. His name is Marcus. He's 5 years old, and he's the best thing that's ever happened to me. This is his mother, Vivian Hayes, the woman I fell in love with 6 years ago and never stopped loving despite our time apart." Cameras flashed. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Our story isn't scandalous or manipulative. It's human. We loved each other. A misunderstanding separated us. She was pregnant and didn't tell me because she believed I had betrayed her trust. Those beliefs were wrong, based on miscommunication, but they were genuine. She was protecting our son the best way she knew how." A reporter shouted a question. "Mr. Ashford, are you saying Ms. Hayes didn't deliberately hide your son to extort money?" "I'm saying Vivian Hayes works as a physical therapist, makes a modest living, and has raised an extraordinary child while asking nothing from me or my family. She's not here for money. She's here because we're building a family together. Because Marcus deserves to know his father. Because sometimes people get second chances." Harrison stood abruptly. "This is absurd. You're compromising the company's reputation for a woman who—" "Enough." Dominic's voice cut through the room like a blade. You don't get to speak about her. You don't get to make this about business. This is my family. A family built on deception. No, a family built on love and healing and second chances. Something you've never understood because control matters more to you than connection." The room went silent. Dominic continued, his voice quieter but no less powerful. "I'm announcing my resignation as CEO of Ashford Pharmaceuticals, effective in 30 days. I'll remain on the board, but day-to-day operations will pass to someone who can give the company their full attention. Because my attention belongs to my son. To building a relationship I missed 6 years of. To being the father and partner I should have been all along." The room erupted. Reporters shouting questions. Harrison's face purple with rage. But Dominic just smiled, turned to Vivian and Marcus, and said clearly into the microphone, "Some things matter more than empires. I'm choosing what matters." He walked off the podium, still shaky on his braces, but upright. His hand found Vivian's. Together, with Marcus between them, they left the press conference. In the car afterward, Marcus looked between his parents with serious eyes. "Does this mean we're a real family now? The kind that lives together?" Dominic and Vivian exchanged glances. "Would you like that?" Dominic asked carefully. "Living together?" Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "Can we live in the sky apartment? With the telescope? What do you think?" Dominic turned to Vivian, the question in his eyes about far more than just living arrangements. Vivian thought about her small apartment in Dorchester, about the life she'd built alone, about the walls she'd constructed to keep herself safe. And then she thought about the man beside her who'd given up his company for his family, the son between them who deserved both parents, the love she'd never quite buried. "I think," she said slowly, "that maybe it's time to stop being scared. Time to choose us. Is that a yes?" "That's a yes." Marcus cheered. Dominic pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me. For giving us another chance. Thank you for not giving up. For finding us again. I'll always find you. No matter what." The months that followed were an adjustment. Moving Marcus to a new school in Manhattan. Navigating the press interest that gradually faded as predicted. Learning to live together as a family after years apart. But they made it work. Dominic continued his physical therapy, his improvements ongoing. By month 6, he could walk short distances unassisted. By month 9, the wheelchair was used only for long outings. His medical team remained baffled. Published papers on his case. Called it the most significant spontaneous recovery from complete spinal cord injury in medical history. Marcus still insisted it was his healing hands. The doctors developed a theory about psychosomatic components, about how emotional trauma could suppress physical healing, about how finding purpose and love could unlock the body's recovery mechanisms. Vivian thought they were all probably right in different ways. Science and love weren't opposites. They were partners in healing. Harrison eventually resigned from Ashford Pharmaceuticals after evidence surfaced of his financial improprieties. The tabloid leak had been traced back to him. His attempt to destroy Dominic's credibility had backfired spectacularly. In his absence, Dominic restructured the company with a new focus: accessible medicine, pediatric research, a foundation named Marcus's Healing Hands dedicated to rehabilitation research, purpose aligned with profit, legacy built on love instead of control. It was on a Tuesday evening in spring, nearly a year after their reunion, that Dominic proposed. Not with fanfare or elaborate planning. Just the three of them in the penthouse, Marcus working on homework, Vivian reading on the couch. Dominic walked over, no canes, no braces, moving with only a slight hesitation in his gait. He knelt beside the couch, pulled out a box, opened it to reveal the same ring he'd planned to give her 6 years ago. "I've carried this for 6 years, he said. Waiting. Hoping. I'd given up on ever having the chance to ask this question. But, here we are. Against all odds. A family already, but I want to make it official. Vivian Hayes, will you marry me?" Marcus looked up from his homework. "Say yes, Mama. Please say yes." Vivian looked at the ring. At Dominic kneeling before her, whole in ways that had nothing to do with walking. At Marcus watching with hopeful eyes. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. 1,000 times yes. Dominic slipped the ring on her finger, pulled her into his arms, kissed her like they had all the time in the world, because finally, they did. Marcus joined the embrace, wrapping his small arms around both parents. "We're official now, right?" Like, really, really official? Really, really official, Dominic confirmed. Good. I've been waiting forever. The wedding happened 6 weeks later. Small and intimate, just family and close friends. Vivian's mother cried happy tears. Dominic's sister served as Vivian's maid of honor. Marcus was the ring bearer, taking his responsibility with utmost seriousness. Harrison was not invited. Dominic walked Vivian down the aisle, the symbolism not lost on anyone. They'd both come so far. The vows they wrote were simple and honest. I promise to trust you, even when I'm scared, Vivian said. To choose us, even when it's hard. To believe in our love, even when circumstances make it difficult. You are my second chance, my healing, my home. I promise to be worthy of your trust, Dominic responded. To put our family first, always. To love you and Marcus with everything I am. You saved me in ways that have nothing to do with medicine and everything to do with love. I am yours. Completely. Marcus's addition to the ceremony was unscripted. He walked up to the officiant during the vows and asked if he could say something. Surprised but charmed, the officiant agreed. Marcus turned to face the small gathering. I helped my daddy get better. I have healing hands. But he helped my mama get better too. She used to be sad sometimes, even when she smiled. Now she's happy for real. So I think they healed each other. That's what families do. They heal the broken parts. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. After the ceremony, after the celebration, after Marcus was tucked into bed in what was now officially their home, Vivian and Dominic stood at the window looking out at the city. How's it feel? Vivian asked. Being married? Like coming home after a very long journey. Do you regret any of it? The years apart? The pain? Dominic considered this. No. Because all of it led here. To this moment. To our family. To understanding what actually matters. I wouldn't choose to go through it again, but I wouldn't trade the lessons learned either. That's very philosophical for midnight. I'm a man of depth and mystery. You're a man who just stepped on my foot. The disability sometimes has its perks. Built-in excuse for clumsiness. Vivian laughed, the sound free and joyful. I love you, Dominic Ashford. I love you, Vivian Ashford. Thank you for coming back into my life. For bringing our son. For giving me a reason to heal. For being my second chance. Thank you for not giving up. For fighting for us. For showing Marcus what it means to be a father. They kissed, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline, two people who'd found each other twice, who'd healed together, who'd built a family from broken pieces. In his room, Marcus slept peacefully, his drawing of their family on the nightstand. Mama, Daddy, and Me, the title read in careful 5-year-old handwriting. All together. All healed. 6 months later, Vivian stood in the same restaurant where everything had changed. La Lumiere, hosting another Maritime Heritage Foundation event, but this time, she wasn't alone. This time, Dominic sat beside her, Marcus between them, a family attending together. At a nearby table she noticed a young man in a wheelchair, sitting alone, his expression lonely and defeated. Marcus noticed too. His empathetic radar never missed someone in pain. Mama, he looks sad. Can I go talk to him? Vivian and Dominic exchanged glances, both remembering another night. Another lonely person in a wheelchair, another little boy with healing hands. What do you think? Vivian asked her husband. I think healing is meant to be shared, Dominic replied. I think our son has a gift. I think some connections are supposed to happen. They watched Marcus slide from his chair, walk over to the stranger, and kneel beside his wheelchair with familiar compassion. Hi, I'm Marcus. You look like you could use a friend. The young man, startled, looked down at the child, surprise and confusion crossing his features. I know it seems weird, Marcus continued, his small hands moving to rest gently on the wheelchair's armrest. But I have healing hands. My daddy was in a chair too. Now he walks. Maybe I can help you too. Or maybe we can just talk. Sometimes talking helps as much as healing. The young man's eyes filled with tears. I don't think anything can help me. That's what my daddy thought too. But he was wrong. People helped him. Love helped him. Hope helped him. You just need the right combination. Vivian felt Dominic's hand find hers under the table, his fingers lacing through hers with practiced ease. He's going to change that man's life, Dominic murmured. He changed ours, Vivian replied. Maybe that's his purpose. Being a catalyst for healing. At the other table, the young man was smiling now, talking to Marcus with growing animation. Marcus's hands gestured enthusiastically, his whole body involved in the conversation. "We should probably go introduce ourselves," Vivian said. "Before Marcus adopts another person. That's my son. No stranger is safe from his compassion." "Our son," Vivian corrected gently. "Our son," Dominic agreed, the words still bringing a smile to his face. They walked over together, Dominic's slight limp barely noticeable, his hand steady in Vivian's. Ready to support their son's latest healing mission. Ready to share their story of hope and second chances with someone who needed to hear it. Because that's what healed people did. They passed it on. Turned their scars into testimonies. Their pain into purpose. Their broken places into bridges for others to cross. The young man's name was David. 22 years old. Motorcycle accident 6 months ago. Complete spinal cord injury. Certain he'd never walk again. Certain his life was over. By the end of the evening, he had Marcus's hand-drawn picture of a superhero in a wheelchair. Dominic's personal contact information. An invitation to visit their family. The beginning of hope. 3 years later, David walked at his wedding. Still using canes, still dealing with challenges, but walking. He credited Marcus's healing hands. The doctors credited intensive therapy and remarkable determination. Dominic credited the power of believing recovery was possible. They were all right. Marcus, now 8 years old, started a program at his school. Kids with Healing Hands, teaching other children about compassion, accessibility, and seeing people beyond their circumstances. The program spread to other schools, then other cities. One child's innocent gesture in a restaurant became a movement. Vivian published a book about unconventional healing methods, the intersection of emotional and physical recovery. It became required reading in physical therapy programs. Dominic transformed Ashford Pharmaceuticals completely, focusing on accessible medicine and rehabilitation research. The company's profits actually increased under his compassionate leadership. But more importantly, they were happy. Not perfectly. Not without challenges. Blended families are complicated. Disabilities don't disappear just because you fall in love. Old wounds sometimes ache, but they faced it together. With honesty. With commitment. With the kind of love that chooses healing over hurt. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Dominic presented Vivian with a gift. Not jewelry or expensive things, but a framed photograph. The same restaurant where they'd reunited. A moment captured by a wedding photographer who'd been working that night. Dominic in his wheelchair, Marcus kneeling at his feet, Vivian rushing toward them with her hands outstretched. The moment everything changed. The moment healing began. "I didn't know anyone had captured this," Vivian breathed, studying the image. "I tracked down the photographer last year, paid her an obscene amount for the rights to this single shot. Because this is us. This is our beginning. It's beautiful. We're beautiful. Broken and healing and beautiful." Marcus, now 10, rolled his eyes at his parents' mushiness but couldn't hide his smile. "You guys are so dramatic," says the kid who started a global compassion movement from a single conversation. "That's different. That's important work. And this isn't?" Dominic gestured to their family, to the home they'd built, to the love they'd chosen daily for 5 years. "Okay, fine. It's important too." Marcus's grin was unrepentant. "But can we eat anniversary cake now? Because I've been very patient." "Yes, we can eat cake." As they celebrated, as Marcus chattered about his latest project, as Dominic's hand found Vivian's with the unconscious rightness of 5 years of touch, Vivian reflected on the impossibility of their story. A chance encounter in a restaurant. A child's healing hands. A love that survived misunderstanding, separation, disability, and doubt. Second chances that became forevers. It shouldn't have worked. By all logical reasoning, they should have remained broken, separate, lost to each other. But love didn't operate on logic. Healing didn't follow predictable paths. And sometimes, the most broken things became the most beautiful when given the right care, the right love, the right second chance. Vivian had spent 6 years believing she'd made the right choice in leaving. 6 years protecting herself and Marcus from a threat that didn't exist. Now she understood that the right choice and the easy choice were rarely the same. That trust was harder than fear but infinitely more rewarding. That some loves were worth the risk of getting hurt again. Looking at her husband, at her son, at the life they'd built from the rubble of misunderstanding and loss, She knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would make the same choice every time. To trust. To try. To heal. Because broken things, when given kindness and time and love, didn't just heal. They became stronger than before. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of second chances, and the healing that comes from love and forgiveness, I need you to do something. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to rebuild what was broken. Leave a comment telling me about your own second chance story, because I read every single one, and your experiences matter. Hit that like button if you believe some connections are worth fighting for, no matter how much time has passed or how impossible the obstacles seem. And subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories, because every week we bring you narratives that remind us what it means to be human, to hurt, to heal, to hope, to love despite fear, to trust despite betrayal, to build beautiful things from broken pieces. Thank you for spending this time with Vivian, Dominic, and Marcus. Thank you for believing in their story. And most importantly, thank you for believing that your own story, whatever chapters you're currently writing, can have a beautiful ending too. Until next time, keep healing, keep hoping, keep loving. Because the most profound transformations happen not in moments of perfection, but in moments of choosing connection despite every reason to build walls. Some people come into our lives and change everything. Some love stories end before they begin. But the truly magical ones, the ones worth telling, are the ones that find their way back. Against odds. Against logic. Against time itself. This was one of those stories. May you find your own healing. Your own second chance. Your own love that refuses to stay broken. Good night, and remember, broken things touched with kindness don't just heal. They become beautiful.